Good morning, everybody. This is Thursday of Holy Week, and our passage today comes from John chapter 13, verses 1 through 20. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, when the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments, and taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, do you wash my feet?" Jesus answered him, "What I am doing you do not understand now, but afterward you will understand." Peter said to him, "You shall never wash my feet." And Jesus answered him, "If I do not wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "The one who is bathed does not need to wash except for his feet, but is completely clean, and you are clean, but not every one of you." For he knew who was to betray him. That is why he said, "Not all of you are clean." When he had washed their feet and put on his outer garments and resumed his place, he said to them, "Do you understand what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that you should also do just as I have done for you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. I am not speaking of all of you. I know whom I have chosen. But the scripture will be fulfilled. He who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. I am telling you this now before it takes place, that when it does take place, you may believe that I am he. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever receives the one I send receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me." This is a passage that's extremely familiar to us. We in our church hear it at least twice a year at communion and feet washing service. And I guess I struggle with knowing what new thing can be said about this passage. But this morning as I was reading it, this verse or this statement kept jumping out at me. It's when Jesus says, "If I do not wash you, you have no share with me." That's in verse 8. Jesus said this to Peter. Now, if we look at this scene in the upper room, what is going on here is so significant on so many levels. Here you have Jesus, the Word, the Creator, Lord and Master, doing the work that is reserved for a slave. And not just any slave. We're talking about the lowest of slaves, a Gentile slave. A Jew would not touch another Jew's feet. Even a Jewish slave would not touch another Jew's feet. This work was reserved for a Gentile slave. And here you have Jesus going around with some water and a towel, washing the dirty, dusty feet of lowly fishermen and tax collectors. And what's so significant to me, or one of the things that's significant to me about this passage, is that none of the other disciples speak up about this. None of the other disciples protest Jesus doing the work of a slave. Nobody speaks up, that is, except for Peter. And we know that Peter often gets a bad rap. But I think I've said this in the past that I kind of like Peter, and I like how he responds here. Do you remember in Matthew 16, Jesus, they were at Caesarea Philippi looking at everything there, and Jesus turns to his disciples and he says this. It says here in Matthew 16, he asked his followers, "Who do people say that I, the Son of Man, am?" And they said, "Some say you are John the Baptist, and some say Elijah, and others say Jeremiah or one of the early preachers." And then Jesus says, "But who do you say that I am?" And Peter jumps in and he says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." You can say what you want to about Peter, but and he may have been impulsive and speak quickly, but I think he understood. He at least understood who Jesus was. And I think that helps us to understand why he protests Jesus' action in the upper room. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Why are you washing my feet? And that's when Jesus says this very profound thing to Peter. If I don't wash you, you have no part with me. If I don't wash you, you have no share with me. Because Peter, here's what I think is going on. Even though Peter realizes who Jesus is, he is trying to dictate what Jesus should do. You aren't going to wash my feet. Okay, well, if you're going to wash it, if you're going to wash my feet, you might as well do a complete job of it. Wash my hands and my head as well. Does that sound kind of familiar to you? Can we identify with this a little bit? I think I can. Because, even though I know who Jesus is, or at least I have some idea of who Jesus is, and even on this side of history, even though I know what Jesus has done for me, it's still my tendency to pull myself up by my own bootstraps and take care of my own washing. I still try to make myself presentable before God. Jesus says here, unless I do the washing, you don't have any part with me unless I do the washing. It's Jesus who does the work, both in drawing us to the Father and making us presentable to Him, and in the continued cleansing and sanctifying that needs to happen in our lives. Unless Jesus does the work, we have no part with Him. We have no share with Him. Unless Jesus does the work, we do not have union with Him. My question for us today on this Thursday of Holy Week is, who is doing the washing in your life? Who is doing the washing in my life? Is it Jesus, or am I trying to scrub myself? Until next time, God bless you.